This week on Squats and Margaritas, it's Emmy Award-winning journalist, menopause and midlife advocate, Tamsen Fadal. I had the honor of being interviewed by her twice in New York City, and now I get to interview Tamsen. She is a midlife health advocate. She talks about hormone replacement therapy, menopause. I need all of the information. I think I am in perimenopause right now. I want to get into that with her so I can come out of it alive. I'm so excited to talk to her. She has the best dating advice and self-acceptance advice. Go and follow her on Instagram at Tamsen Fadal. And while you have your phone, please do me a favor and leave me a review for Squats and Margaritas podcast on Apple Podcasts. And if you get anything valuable out of this episode, send it to a friend. Here is my episode with Tamsen Fadal. Hi, Tamsen.
How are you?
I'm so good. You're here. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you so much.
I had the opportunity to be interviewed by you twice, and I wasn't following you on Instagram yet. And I can't believe that I wasn't, because the gems that you drop daily. And once you interviewed me, I was like, oh, I love her. I looked you up on Instagram and I want you here today to share the gems that I've gotten from you. I want to talk about hormone replacement therapy. I want to talk about menopause, more specifically perimenopause, because I think I am in it. And I want to talk about dating and how you got married recently. I haven't shared a ton about this yet, but I am actually in the middle of a divorce and it has not been the best. Yeah. So that's where I would love this to go. So I wanted to start. I know you're a big midlife advocate. Talk about hormone replacement therapy, because I feel like you said it's changed your life, but there is like stigma around, like, is it dangerous? What are some of the misconceptions? And talk about what it did for you.
Yeah. So I was one of the ones that had the misconceptions. I lost my mother at an early age. She was 44 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She died at 51. Unbeknownst to all of us, she went through menopause as a result of breast cancer and a double mastectomy. And so somewhere in my mind, I always thought estrogen was bad. And hormone replacement therapy, which now they call menopausal therapy, is something that I never thought was an option for me, simply because I had a mother with breast cancer who died of an estrogen-based breast cancer. And so when I wound up going through menopause, or realized I had hit menopause, which was also unbeknownst to me because it was nothing we had ever talked about growing up, I just knew that someday when I got older, that was going to happen, you know. But when I went through it and I wound up talking to one doctor after another, and hormone therapy was recommended to me to go through some of the symptoms that were the more severe symptoms of hot flashes, of night sweats, not being able to sleep, weight gain, brain fog, which was a huge one that really crushed my confidence at work. I was afraid. And it wasn't until I I'm a journalist by trade, and I did a deep dive into a lot of the research and learning and interviewing people to find out exactly what was going on. And there was a study that was done in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, that really scared women. It really did a big disservice to women. It had to be abruptly halted. But essentially, the headlines screamed out, estrogen is bad, hormone therapy is bad. And since then, there have been studies done and research done, and there are some brilliant doctors. I'm not a doctor, brilliant doctors out there, though, who talk to this and talk about this. And so I wound up trying hormone therapy about, now it's probably been 2 years, but it was it's been life altering for me. Whereas I'm able to sleep, whereas I'm not having hot flashes that just make my body become an instant furnace, where I can think straight. So it's been a game changer in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And you say you're not a doctor, but you went back and got certified, like in your spare time after being an Emmy Award-winning journalist. You're like, I'm going to get certified in integrative health. Like, that's how passionate you were about what it did for you. Before we get into menopause, and I know you said you felt like incapacitated at work. Can we just like put the train back to perimenopause? And
yes,
I don't think a lot of people know exactly when that sets in. Again, you think like at some point I'm going to go through menopause, but Tamsen, I don't know what's happening to me right now. I'm only 41, but my mom went through perimenopause at 41. And I think that that's one thing you're supposed to look at your mom like that. Even if it seems young, if your mom did, then that can happen to you. But I there's no other way to explain it than like rage out moments. Like my hormones are all over the place. And again, I thought I was like too young. I'm only 41, but something is not right. Can you talk about some symptoms of perimenopause and like a typical onset of when these symptoms typically come?
Yeah, I mean, you're in that stage of when those symptoms typically come. Everybody
Okay.
comes by perimenopause and menopause differently for sure. But it could be 7 to 10 years before menopause hits that you start experiencing some of the symptoms. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be in menopause next week, but what it means is that there's hormones are changing.
Mhm.
And the good thing is, this is the good thing, and this is really where I want people to listen, is that because you already know the word perimenopause and you're already identifying symptoms, you're way ahead of the game. Like, I had no idea. I just thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was going crazy. I thought it was the result of a very public divorce I had. I thought I was upset because of stress, and that's why I wasn't sleeping. So I hadn't even heard the word perimenopause until a few years ago. So one, that means that we're doing our jobs by making sure the next generation hears that word and is aware of those symptoms. Two, because of the fact you're able to identify some of those, and there's 34 plus symptoms of menopause that have been recorded and reported. I have a
Whoa.
symptom tracker over my website for anybody that wants to just download it and look at it. But there are a number of different symptoms, and everyone's not going to get all 34. And some you'll get one or two, and then those will go away, and maybe you get another one. But the fact that we're aware of those things, and you can walk into a doctor and say, listen, I think I'm having some of these symptoms. Here's what they are. Here's how long they're happening. Here's when they started. What can you do to help me? Is there a low dose birth control pill that I could go on to help, balance or regulate? And the most important thing beyond that is having a doctor who's willing to listen and to talk to you about it and acknowledge it, and doesn't say it's all in your head or suck it up, or women over the years have all dealt with this. You can too. That's the second most important thing that you can have for yourself.
Can you talk about some of the symptoms? I mentioned rage out because that is
Yes.
what's happening with me. Like I like scream at my kids and I'm like, I am so sorry. And like you said, you attribute it to, like I said, I'm going through a divorce. I'm like, maybe I'm just like super emotional because of this. You always attribute it to something else.
Sure.
You don't have to give me 34, but what are the
I won't give
symptoms?
you 34.
Okay.
There's the ones that already. There's the hot flashes, there's the night sweats, there's anxiety, there's rage. There are mood changes is really kind of what it's couched under. Then there's some different things like frozen shoulder, where you can't necessarily like lift your shoulder up, the right way, and you go, wait a minute, what? When did that happen?
Yeah.
There's weight gain, especially around the middle. Again, that was a big one for me, where I had always worked out to keep weight away, and then my diet and things were not changing and my weight was still changing. There's itchy skin, there is loss of hair, there's some different things, but at the end of the day, what they come back to is a lack of estrogen, or estrogen kind of waning away in your body and your hormones changing. And as you realize that, and you realize, look, there's not something wrong with me, that the brain fog doesn't mean I have dementia. The brain fog means that I'm going through this transition. I think the sooner that we do that, and we realize that we're not just trying to survive these years, but you can actually thrive and be more powerful through them, is when we start to, to see things a little more clearly.
And talking about thriving in this era of our lives, can you talk about hormone replacement therapy, exactly what it is? And if your doctor is like down to put you on something like that, just talk about what it means and what it does.
Yeah. I mean, look, it allows you to, I've heard a lot of women say like, well, I feel like myself again. And I feel like a better version of myself again. That's how I feel, because I feel like I went through it was a tough time. It was a tough time when I read teleprompter for a living.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at a word and a word would come by like diamond, and I knew the word, it was familiar to me, and it wouldn't come out of my mouth. That was scary.
Yeah.
And I really did notice that my confidence took quite a hit. And, as I mentioned, I went through a divorce in my early 40s too. So I didn't know what was going on. It was just kind of this whole intersection of all these things at the same time that I think we deal with. But when you're able to correct the issue, or at least identify that there are solutions to it. And I want to say, not all women are going to be eligible or able to take hormones, and not all want to. And that's okay, because there are other solutions out there. There was just the first, backed non-hormonal prescription that has come out. I don't know if you saw it, but during the Super Bowl, this commercial popped up. I feel like all the guys, everyone's cheering for the game. And a lot of women were like, what? A menopause commercial at the Super Bowl?
Right.
But we need those kind of things because there's some people that are not able to do that. And so it's important that we realize there are options and more that will be coming on the market every day to help women, because this is half of our population. And we're not just going to be menopausal a third of our lives. It's going to be like a half of our life based on, longevity and how long we're going to live, hopefully.
Yes. And just talking about it, normalizing it. Like if a woman is feeling this way and you feel like this is just what you have to do, you go through this in your early 40s and then early 50s, there are alternatives and there are things that can help. And I don't know, there's just a stigma, like you're not supposed to talk about these things, and you normalize aging and you talk about it. Like you said, like you're at dinner and you're talking about menopause, you're saying the things that women typically kind of keep to themselves. And then it just makes you feel more isolated when you're not talking about it. Thank you for normalizing it. Like you share such great advice. And you're 52?
52.
And you shared 52 things that you have learned in your 52 years. I wanted to pull a couple of things out of there that I was just like, yes, that you could kind of elaborate on. The first one, first impressions aren't based on looks. They're based on confidence.
Don't you feel like that's true though? You walk into a room and you're so worked up about, I just remember always thinking like, okay, everything's gonna be perfect.
Yes.
And then I realized that the person that I would be looking at across the room that I thought was so spectacular was the one that walked in without a care in the world, right? And owned it. It wasn't worried whether or not her, I don't know, dress was wrinkled or her makeup wasn't perfect or her hair wasn't, exactly the way it should be. And I realized that, it took me time. Like all these things took time to realize. And I think that, I don't have children of my own, but I feel like if I can pass these things on to another woman, like that's kind of cool. I get advice from women who are older than me, and I want to pass on what I've learned to women that are younger than me. So but I think confidence is kind of everything, in terms of how you feel about yourself, but how other people perceive you.
100%. And it's interesting, like we both went through our divorce around the same time. I feel like women finally step into self-confidence and kind of owning who they are and not worrying so much about what everybody thinks in their early 40s. And I've talked about this a couple of times on my show. I don't know the numbers, but I'm going to guess that they're high, that women in their early 40s file for divorce because it's like, you kind of step into who you are and you're like, this doesn't work for me anymore. And if you started your relationship like I did in your early 20s, things that worked for you then, or that you were accepting of then, are different. And you kind of just wake up and it's like, wait a minute, maybe I believe this too. I projected a different image in my 20s, and what I was putting out, which was a less confident kind of just on my husband's arm, whatever you want, kind of personality, attracted the match for that. But now stepping into who I am, it's not a match anymore. And now it's like, now, hopefully, I mean, I'm mid-divorce. I'm not even thinking about dating, even though I am going to ask you about that. Now that I'm projecting who I actually am, that should mean that I should attract the match for this, like for who I actually am. And it's just so daunting. I've been with my husband for 18 years. And you mentioned a very public divorce around the same age. Like, can we kind of talk through how you came out of that? Because yes, your hormones are already off because of perimenopause. And it's like, for a minute, I was like, did I file for divorce because I'm like raging out about perimenopause? And I don't think that's the case, but like, can you talk about that time in your life and how you kind of just step into your own and maybe like things that you were accepting of, you're not anymore?
Yeah. You make so many good points there. I remember, when I hit 40 and there was a big party for me at 40 years old. And I'm like, wow, I'm 40. I'm in New York City, my career. And I finally got married. I got married a little bit later in life thinking like, I don't want to make any mistakes. I want it to be perfect. And I would joke around like, oh, I skipped my first divorce. Ha ha ha. Well, that turned out the joke was on me. But what I realized at that age really was who I had become, right? And where my confidence had come in and what I wanted next. And, the person that I was with, I attracted somebody that I needed to get me to the next place, I think, in my journey of who I was. And what I didn't realize is that person was definitely not for me, probably not even then, but I was really focused on my career, wasn't really paying attention to my personal life for a long time. I traveled all over the country, moving from one job to the next. And I think I didn't really know who I was, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so when I got into that relationship, and then I realized, well, this is definitely not who I am either. It was a scary decision because I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going, this many years into it now, admitting this perceived failure in my life, and try to come out of that. And it was public, it was in the papers, and then he was talking in the papers, and it was in Page Six, and I thought, oh my god, just not how you want to be in the paper.
No.
And there were some very quiet times, and some really, times of dark times, and times of depression. But what I did really learn from that is who I was by myself before I was with somebody new. And what I also learned is what I was going to be willing and not willing to accept, and where my boundaries were. And I don't know that we talked a lot about boundaries back then, but I certainly did establish some for myself, because it was important for me to not morph every time I was with somebody new. And that was what my pattern had been all along. And so it took a long time for me to start dating in a serious way. And my husband today, and I had sworn off, I'm never gonna get married again. Never.
Yeah.
I never need to get married. And he was the same way. And so the fact that we're married is kind of funny. We laugh about it a lot, but what I love about where I am today is that I'm not constantly worried about the decisions I make and worried about what his reaction is going to be. I care about it, but it doesn't change my thoughts about things, right? In the right way. And I'm
Yes.
not trying to always say like, what would he do? What's the right thing to do? What's going to not make him upset? What's going to make me, I'm not having those conversations that I did have before. And I also was looking for somebody different at this stage of my life. In this stage of my life, I wanted somebody that I was going to travel the world with, like travel the world in terms of not being all over the place, but like just be alongside me in the world. And that was what was important to me more than this big ridiculous list that I had the first time around. And so it's nice to see where changes happen. Sometimes they're subtle, and sometimes they're they whack you right in the face.
Yes, just you finding that and finding your match, because I'm in the dark place, honestly. And I have 2 kids, and
Sorry.
50% of the time they're not here. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm 41. We were married 8 years, but we were together 18. And now I'm just sitting on the couch 4 days a week, without my family. And it's kind of like I regress. I'm like, I'm back single again, but just like knowing that there's hope that you could find your actual match, and that, I mean, you have all the doubt that it's like, did I do the right thing? Especially with the kids and uprooting
Always,
them. But
right.
it's like, I go back to, and I know we talked about this when you interviewed me, what I'm modeling for my daughter. And it's like, if I am accepting of these things and just kind of where the relationship is going, she's going to seek that out and be like, well, this is love. This is marriage. This is what my mom did.
Mhm.
And that was the determining factor. I was like, what am I showing her? What would I want for her? And I'm the person she looks to for that. So I have to kind of just stay steadfast in that decision, that it's the right decision, and that someday I will meet the person that I like, my match for who I am now, like who I actually am, not who I was. I don't want to say pretending, but like projecting, like you said, like I don't want to make him mad.
Who you're growing into really
Yeah.
is what it was. You're young. I think the one thing I would never want to teach anyone younger than me is to settle. And I think that a lot of times we don't use that word very much, but the truth is that yes, could you go back into your relationship, but would you feel like you were settling? And if you feel like that, eventually that comes out, and you are unhappy or miserable, and children see that. There's no question about it. But more important, you see it. And so I spent a lot of nights on the couch by myself, next to my chihuahua with a pizza, watching
Yeah.
TV, not doing much on a Saturday night.
Do you have
It's okay.
cameras in my house? I rescued
No, but
a dog. Tamsen, I know you lost your
yeah.
dog, and I was not a dog person, and I am self-aware enough to be like, I rescued a dog because I'm here by myself on the couch. Like, that's where I'm at
Yes.
right now. Okay, thank you for saying it.
I was there too. And I'm so happy for those moments. Like, look, are those moments hard to get through sometimes? 100%. Are we scrolling around online, looking at what everybody else is doing that's so great while we're sitting there? 100%. Those moments grow you. And I don't care what anybody else says. Those moments grow you into who you want to be and what you're willing to accept with that next person. Because I think the last thing you want to do is repeat what you did before or who you were before, because it's not who you are anymore. And so I'm very sure about that, because I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of women and their stories over the years. You know, I wrote my book in 2015. And now it's, you know, it's been a while since then, and there's a lot of updates probably that are needed to it. But at the end of the day, what really worked for me in that stage was 90-day increments of getting through things and understanding that every day was not forever, and that I was living my someday today and not waiting for tomorrow to start. And so when you have a Saturday night at home watching TV, that's okay. Monday, maybe you go out with a friend, or Tuesday night, you know, you're going to see your kids again. Or I think it's so important to give yourself that breathing room and not feel unhappy about it, because what often happens is we jump into that next relationship and we think we know who we are, right? But we haven't had any of that alone time. And I think that alone time is really important to be able to hear our own thoughts. There's a lot of noise out there, and it's hard to do that while you're working and hosting podcasts and doing social media and taking care of kids and helping your parent. It's hard to have that alone time. And so I really, those were the moments I cherished when I look back more than anything else.
I'm loving my alone time, but I'm probably spending too much time there. But it brings me to one of your next tips, the people that you
Yeah.
surround yourself. Like, obviously you are glowing now. You found your match. The 5 people that you surround yourself, like that's who is determining your habits in your life. Can you talk about that point?
Yeah, I mean, like this is, you know, that age old adage of that it's who you surround yourself with. And I've had to change those things out. I did a video this week that really, I think it really resonated with a lot of people. And I was very surprised by some of the people that came out and said like, oh my gosh. But you know, my
Yeah.
friendship group has changed over the years. It has. And there have been people that have been in my life that I was trying to prove myself to for a long time, or trying to get their acceptance, or didn't make me feel so great about things. And especially in my divorce, because you have a lot of the couple friends, right? That want to be friends with you when you're part of the couple, and now you're not part of the couple anymore. And they don't want you, they don't
Yeah.
want the third person hanging around. But it was the ones that were okay with that I'm still friends with today. And it was important for me to note that, not the ones that came back after I had another partner. It was the ones that accepted me for who I was, both as myself and as in a couple. But I do think that those 5 people are important, because those are the habits that we pick up. Those are the conversations that we have. Those are the thoughts that are in our mind when we walk away from them, right? I mean, those are the kind of things that you want with you. You don't want somebody that's saying to you, I mean, should you be doing this? You don't want people casting doubt in your mind. Like, that's not helpful. It's good to have somebody to bounce things off of. It's not good to have somebody that you have to prove yourself to all the time.
And when we're talking about friendships, you say that if you spot jealousy in a friend, run.
Competitive is one thing. Competitive, aggressive,
Oh.
the hustle mentality, sure. Jealousy, feeling like you're being undermined all the time, not sure where you stand, not okay. Like, we have enough issues out there. We don't need to go find somebody to make us feel worse about ourselves. So I think there's a big wide world out there, and sometimes you have to, you know, leave some open space in your life for somebody new.
Oh my gosh. My next point was leave things that aren't serving you to make space for the next opportunity. I feel like we've kind of touched on that, but kind of
Yeah.
knowing that that's what you're doing. Like, you are leaving this, and even though it's sad, you're opening it up for the next opportunity. And if you don't leave it, you'll never get that opportunity because it won't be available to you because you're still in the last one.
Yeah, I'm going through it right now actually, and it's like I don't know, it's like the 4th or 5th time in my life that I've left something where I was like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? But I really know it's the right thing, because I really know that there's something else that I really want to do and accomplish out there. And the older I get, the more I'm like, okay, well, I've got this amount of time. If I live to 100, I've got, you know, 48 more years to do
Yeah.
this. But I do think that that's important, because I think that sometimes we get so caught up in the now that we don't realize what else could be available to us. And sometimes that's a really healthy thing and where we need to be. And so whether it's moving, or whether it's a career, or whether it's I don't know, a partnership with somebody, whatever it is, a friendship with somebody, I think that it's important to acknowledge that when it's not working. If you find yourself trying to twist yourself into a pretzel to make something work, or to convince yourself that this is working for you, when you constantly, and you know, we all know what it's like when we're trying to convince ourselves, when you feel
Yeah.
like you're doing that over and over again, you know, it's time. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong place, it just means you're ready for a new place.
I feel like people do that though, because it's like the unknowing. Like, you have to trust that there's
Oh, yeah,
something
no,
better.
it's the
What if you
worst.
think there's nothing better than this? So it's going back to not settling. Like you settle because maybe the grass isn't greener. And
Yeah.
the thought of just not having that something isn't going to be better. And then you second guess, you have to believe that there is something better and don't settle. And that has to be like the governing voice.
It's the what if. It's the what if,
Yes.
you know. I mean, I couldn't have written out where I was going to meet my husband, how I was going to meet my husband, who he was going to be, you know, how I feel different about myself in this part of my life versus how I did 5 years ago. So we don't know the what ifs, right?
Mhm.
We do know when we're sitting in one place. I do know if I could continue to sit in that place, I would have been miserable. And I always think to myself, like, what if I hadn't gotten out of my relationship at that time and I let that continue to chip away at me, right? Or
Yep.
what if? So it's those what ifs. And I've had enough what ifs in my life to be willing to take the chance on the next one.
Thank you. It's so inspiring. Recently, you had like your morning routine, and the
Oh,
first thing is get outside. You just get up and
yes.
okay. Why are we doing
Get
that?
outside. And then
Okay.
I grabbed my drink out there. You know what? I started doing that. I interviewed this doctor talking about light. And I said, well, but it's not always sunny. I live in New York City. It's like not always sunny out. And she goes, that is the first thing that you need to do in the morning. I don't care. After you get out of bed, get outside. And I'm like, what? I need my coffee. I
Mhm.
need to like read 20 emails.
Yeah.
I need to watch the news. And that was my habit for a long time, but I've gotten outside and I've been pushing myself to do that. It's made a remarkable difference. A
Wow.
difference in a couple of things. I think in my mood for sure, and that's what it's supposed to do. But I also think it moves my day, it gets my day started, right? Like I'm more energized. I see people outside. I'm moving. I'm going, and then it keeps my day in motion. And I'm really enjoying that. And it doesn't mean that every day has to be in full 100% gear. Sometimes I'm slothing outside at a very slow pace, but it gets me out the door.
Right.
And I think that that's important. Look, I never want to give people like this whole to-do list to do in the morning, like do this and that, and then you got 10 things in the morning, and you feel like you want to scream before before you leave the house. But I do think
Yeah.
that that's a big one. It's been working for me lately, so I'm going to keep doing it until it doesn't serve me anymore.
Well, you gave me two. One is like a to don't list. Don't look at your
I
device.
just don't.
To don't don't look at your
I
device.
know.
I do it first thing. It's like, okay, I'm still in bed. What's
I know.
happening?
In bed.
Yes.
It's funny. I interviewed Ariana Huffington, and she had just such a foresight about this like years ago.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she had, when she started her Thrive Global site,
Mhm.
she had little beds made up that were chargers. I can't even remember it so well, but it was like a little bed, and you would like take your phone and you would tuck your phone in like the sheet of the bed,
Put it
and
to
then you would
bed.
charge it in another room. And I'm like, Ariana, I am never gonna be that far away from my phone ever. Like, what if there's an emergency? What if,
Yeah.
what if, what if? But I've really tried to make it a point to not jump on there, because you've just brought the whole world into your brain. Like every problem there could be in the world right into your head. I'm not as great at night. I'll admittedly, like I'm not perfect about it at night. I
Okay.
try not to scroll all night long. And sometimes if I can't sleep, I have to have my Audible playing or my Headspace playing. So the phone is over there. But I try not to bring like all of the world's problems in the morning, because that can be a crappy way to start your day.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I've got
Absolutely.
12 things to do before I get out of bed.
And then thinking of all the things in your head, one of your other 52 tips was go clutter free. I am clutter
Oh, well, that's
full.
huge.
Why
I want
should
to
I
come
do
over and
that?
help you declutter.
It'll take too
You
long,
know,
Tamsen. How am I supposed to?
this
No one has time for this.
No,
Oh,
decluttering is like my meditation. It really is. Whenever I have a problem, whenever I'm stuck, whenever I'm trying to write and I can't, whenever I'm stressed out about some kind of dilemma, that's what I go to do. And it actually did start during my divorce. I'd always tried to be very streamlined, because I moved around a lot due to TV news. I moved to, I don't know, 10 cities in a short amount of time.
hmm.
And so it wasn't able to have a lot of stuff all the time, because it was expensive to move all that crap. But it was really important to me during my divorce to get rid of a lot of him, right, in my world. And so what I did is I wound up cluttering and I'm decluttering and arranging and decluttering and winding down. And then I realized, oh, that helped me have clarity in my mind. And
Yeah.
so I remember my cousin moved to the city and she brought all this stuff from LA, and I went, oh my gosh, this is going to be my favorite project ever, to declutter her. And things were going out the door. But I realized two things: what I really need to exist, right? what I'm really using. And that doesn't mean I don't have anything. Like I have a closet full of stuff, but those are things that I really love. And I declutter and I streamline as best I can all the time. And I also think it helps your mind to have a little more clarity so you can be focused on what you're doing. Do you ever go to a hotel room and you feel like that's where you get a lot of good work done? Because it's just like
Yes.
you and the computer. Why?
Yes.
Because none
There's
of
no
your crap
distraction.
is around you,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
None of your crap is around you. And so
100%.
anyway, decluttering was a big thing for me. It helps me be more creative in a lot of ways.
But the fact that like you came up with all of this as you're going through your divorce in the early 40s, and then I
Oh,
have you right
it got
now,
me
it's,
through my divorce.
and I need, like, I'm telling you, I'm on the couch with my dog, Tamsen, and I'm trying to stop, and I know what I need to do. It's just, and when I have my
Yeah,
kids, like, obviously I can't be on the couch, but it's hard for me or anybody else that's going through a divorce with kids or is co-parenting. When they're not here,
yeah.
I don't have like the drive to get up, and I go back in my feelings. So it's like staying
Yep.
just busy and knowing like I
Busy.
get them back today. I can't be on my couch, and this too shall
Well, you got
pass.
to be
And
doing, you've got to be doing,
I know,
they keep you moving, right? But
100%.
I think if while you're moving now and you plan those quieter times, I think that
Mhm.
that's a good way to do that. So, you know, you have a plan, even if that plan doesn't have to be a plan going out with the girls, it doesn't have to be that kind of plan, but you have a plan, whatever it is, whatever you plan to tackle, I think is super important. I really, really do. I believe in it more than anything. That's what helped me get through.
Yeah. And look at you now. Like it's so inspiring. Like for you to know that you went through it at the same age that I am, and look at you like thriving.
Same
That
age.
okay.
Yeah. A
I-
scary age. And I get it. I get it. It's a scary age. And when I did it, I didn't know whether I was going to have kids or not. So I was battling that, you know, at the same
Yeah.
time, because we had just started talking about that. So I, you know, I would say to you, you're so much further ahead than where I was. But I know it can be anxious, but make sure that you know that you have a couple of people in your life that you can talk to about it too, because that helped me get through. My best friend in the world is still the person that helped me pull the trigger at the end of the day and say, okay, I'm calling a mediator and this is what I'm doing. Because I didn't even have the strength to do that at that point. I was so emotionally, you know, abused.
Speaking of scary and anxious, dating after divorce, I try not to make this so like personal and like specific to me, but I know so many women that are in divorces right now, and you can't even think, not that I'm thinking about dating, but I know that you used to be a matchmaker.
I did. I
And
did. Yeah.
what a career you have. Do you have any tips? Like you found your match after divorce, uh,
Way after divorce.
like,
I think it's important not to be looking. One, I think it's important just to get out there and see who's out there because dating is a whole new world, especially when you've been with somebody for a long time.
yes,
Um, Two, I think that, you know, get offline as quickly as possible because a lot of times nowadays it's so much easier to just sit there and have those conversations. You need to get out in person and feel that person's energy and see if there's any hope at all. But I think the most important thing for me anyway was not to be looking for a one or a match or a whatever it was, and not try to fix them so they fit into the space. Like, oh, they have 8 of my 12 things, so the other 4 will work themselves out. And so I
settle.
call them pink flags, you know, they're like not red, but they're pink. And so we think we can fix them, and you shouldn't be at this age, at this time in life, trying to go fix somebody else because it doesn't work.
I love it so much. Talk about
Yeah.
anything you have coming up. I know, when is the documentary coming out?
Documentary, it looks like it'll be next year. And
Okay.
so I'm excited about that. Shredding the silence about menopause and getting through this next step. And the fact that, you know, quite frankly, this is a bigger problem than hot flashes. It's beyond that. And that's what we need to talk about. It's all sorts of things. It's mental health. It's how we deal with it in the workplace. It's how the society deals with it. And it's what we need to do across the board. Education, you know, with medical schools, teaching our kids what this is about and teaching women what they're going through and that it's not the end of the world.
Thank you sincerely for the work that you do.
No, thank you
If
for the
people want
platform.
more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, Tamsen Fadal anywhere, tamsenfadal.com if you want those symptoms. I just put a tracker up there. It's down and dirty, but at least you have them.
Yes, it's such a pleasure to interview you, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. And you got this.